growing up being bullied in that way. And nowadays, you know, you think about colorism and how that affects society and our African American culture, what that means, and maybe not so much dealing with it, but not having an outlet. Like, people really didn't talk about you being you dealing with colorism when I was in middle school. Like now, how it's on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, so many different articles about it and books about it now. Back then, that wasn't talked about. It was just something you had to deal with. And I hated being so dark-skinned.
Hey, Racheal.
Hey, girl.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to have you. Listen, I'm almost ashamed to admit that I did not know, like, everybody is actually supposed to have a pharmacist. You know, like, the same way we have an OBGYN, you got all these doctors.
Right.
And I think it's because the rise of, like, Walmart, CVS. You know, it's all the quick, fast. Like, just go get your prescription, pick it up,
and go.
Crazy.
Yes.
So what made you, first of all, want to be a pharmacist in the first place and open up your own, like, entire pharmacy?
So I had a dream. You know, normally as a child, you have a dream to be some profession. And so I wanted to do something medical. I realized that in high school when I fell in love with, out of all subjects, chemistry. And so I loved chemistry. And so I knew I wanted to do something medical, but I did not want to do, like, be a physician, something like that, because I know I wanted to be able to kind of create a schedule, do my own thing or whatever, and be more flexible than most physicians are. So I wanted that. And so I was researching different careers, and pharmacy stood out. And so the more and more I looked into it, that is what I end up pursuing. And so did not spend a day in a pharmacy prior to majoring in biology with an emphasis in pre-pharmacy, not a day. Did not spend my first day in a pharmacy until I was in actual pharmacy school. And I still knew, like, it was just, this is where I'm supposed to be. And so that's kind of where that evolved. And then opening up a pharmacy, all through pharmacy school, we learn about different sides of pharmacy, not just your Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, but they have other industries that pharmacists are managers or they're supervisors in. And so I wanted to, it's like an entrepreneurial spirit that I knew I had, like, from my dad being an entrepreneur and seeing him run a business. I'm like, I think I can do this. Like, who says that? But I did. I mean, I think I can do this. So kind of was something that always stayed in the back of my mind, even being a pharmacist. And then I said, okay, I've been a pharmacist 11 years. Let's do it.
So, didn't you make history or something of that nature when you opened your practice?
Yeah, being the first Black female pharmacy owner on the Gulf Coast. And I don't know of any that are in Mississippi, any Black female pharmacy owners. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know.
I have no idea.
And so, and it wasn't even that. Like, I didn't do it thinking, oh, I want to make this mark or I want to make this. It was just after it happened, it was kind of a realization like, man, I think I am. I think I, you know.
Yeah.
And so it just goes back to kind of the beginning of why I wanted to do it and kind of evolve from there.
Yeah. So, did you pass every test on the first try? It just was smooth sailing?
It wasn't I wouldn't say smooth sailing. I do tell the story of putting all my eggs in one basket when applying to pharmacy school. Now, prior to that, I received my undergraduate degree from USM, and it was always in my mind. I knew I needed to apply to pharmacy school, but I just at that time struggled with rejection. And what I realized as an adult, like growing up, becoming myself, that's what it was. And so it took me 1.5 years to actually apply for pharmacy school, because I just felt like getting into any professional school, medical, dental, pharmacy, whatever, you hear so many stories of, well, I had to apply over and over and I got so many rejection letters, and so that was playing in my head so much that when it came time to apply, I did not. But finally, whenever I did apply, I applied to one school. Most people apply at least 3 to 4 schools, depending on how much the application fee is, because they can be expensive. So I applied to Xavier University in Louisiana, and that was my only school I applied to. People ask, why didn't you apply to Ole Miss or a school in Florida? I knew I wanted to go to Xavier. And so during that whole process, I sent the application. I remember receiving a phone call for an interview. And so you have to go and interview with one of the faculty. In that interview, it was kind of like God was in that. And if you know me, you know I'm always going to say, if God is in it, that's what I'm going to do. And so it was like God was in that, because it was just such a cool, laid-back interview. It was a conversation. He talked about, we talked about pharmacy and why I wanted to do that. But it was kind of like, it gave me more of a feeling like this is where I need to be. And I remember driving from the school, and I looked over. I remember it like it was yesterday. I looked over to the right, and I was going on the interstate, and it was kind of just a peace that came. It was like, this is it. And I remember thinking that, but then like, is that confirmation? Is that the peace that showing me this is where I will be? And the funny story about it is, I was at a sorority event, and all the weeks leading up to after the interview, like you'll be getting a letter in the mail telling you either you're accepted or denied. And I remember telling my mom, whenever the letter comes and it says Xavier, either it's going to be an envelope, a big envelope, or a small letter. So you have to tell me if it's just a regular envelope or a big envelope. Because if it's a big envelope, that means you got some paperwork to fill out, meaning that you actually got in. And so I was at a sorority event, and it was a Saturday morning. And I remember I had to sing there. And after, I think it was either before or after I sang, I got a call from my mom, and she was like, Rachel, you got a letter from Xavier. And I was like, oh my gosh. I said, Mama, is it a big letter or a regular envelope? She was like, it's a big envelope. Oh my goodness. I said, Mama, bring it to me now, bring it to me. She drove from our house to Biloxi, brought me. And even now, my sorors, they remember that day if they were there, because I was running through the parking lot, screaming and hollering, I got in. And it was just like, even more like God was in that, like being able to experience that, just like having like a dream come true experience. And so I always remember, and my mom and I talk about that, big envelope or little envelope? Because that makes the difference. So.
Baby, listen, that never even would have crossed my brain to ask them questions because, like, who thinks of that?
Right.
Like, regardless, I'd have thought they just put one flat piece of paper in the big envelope. Like, I still might.
Right. You still might get in.
Still might not get in. You know,
is it a little thick or is it thin?
Right.
I need to know.
Yeah, I love that. Now, you said that you struggle with rejection. What do you think that like stemmed from?
I think from an early age, I dealt with self-love and affirmation and validation. When it came to not so much as my parents or my family, it was more so like outside the school and bullying and things of that nature. And so just kind of digging deep and understanding that I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to be accepted. And the big thing when I was in school, what I always dealt with was the color of my skin. You black. You black. You know, dealing with that. And so I didn't really accept myself for who I was until I got to college. And that's kind of where I really, it kind of like I learned so much about who I was and I accepted who I was. But growing up, being bullied in that way, and nowadays, you know, you think about colorism and how that affects society and our African American culture, what that means, and maybe not so much dealing with it, but not having an outlet. Like people really didn't talk about you being, you dealing with colorism when I was in middle school. Like now, how it's on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, so many different articles about it and books about it now. Back then, that wasn't talked about. It was just something you had to deal with. And I hated being so dark-skinned because that's what I was talked about for being so much. Your fingers are dark, your knuckles are dark, your toes are dark. You look like a black monkey and all. And this was from black people. Just, this wasn't, you know, other ethnicities and nationality. This was my own people. And so just dealing with that. And so that led to wanting to be accepted in some way, but then fearing rejection. And so it just spiraled into who I was going, you know, being professional and all of that, going through college and realizing, like, once I got to that point where I realized in college, like, you are beautiful. Like, what? You need to accept who you are. Yeah, you dark skinned, but you're a beautiful dark skinned girl. Like, you're a beautiful dark skinned woman. And I think realizing that part, and then going through, even though I realized and understood that going through college, and then still dealing with fear and rejection before going to pharmacy school, you know, I really didn't understand that was the root of all of that, and, you know, still wanting that acceptance.
For sure. Do you think you had like I can think of certain things that people said, you know, that made me dislike a certain part of myself. Did you have a defining statement? Like, I heard such and such say this about me, and then that was what affected you.
Right. Yes. So I remember in middle school, it was someone who would always talk about my skin color. And so I went through stages of, you know, they would talk about one thing. So you got dark circles. All right, your knuckles are black. Then everything about me, I remember not even wanting to wear sandals because my toes were darker than my legs or whatever, you know. And for me, not realizing, okay, that person, when you're 13, you don't think about the big picture. Okay, that person is dealing with stuff within themselves. They hate themselves, so they feel like they want that feeling to be on you.
Yeah.
No, you don't realize that, but there were certain instances that made me just kind of think about, should I dislike this part of myself? Yeah, I am dark. That is, back then, to me, and I say back then like I'm 80 years old, but back then, I feel like when I would be put in those situations and then questioning who I was, like being dark was bad.
Yeah.
Having, dark circles or, bags under my eyes was ugly. Just attributing my color to ugliness.
Yeah.
And so that's what I had to I had to relearn that. Like, dark skin doesn't mean ugly. And that's what was put in my head. Like I said, not by my parents, because they would always talk about you beautiful, but you spend a lot of time at school, you spend a lot of time with these people, and so it starts to be ingrained in you in thinking, well, that is true. And so as I grew up, I realized, in coming into being more confident in who I am, not accepting you're pretty for a dark-skinned girl.
Yeah.
I'm pretty for a girl.
Yeah. I'm just pretty in general.
Right. It's not that. And just understanding that the biases and things that people have about you, you don't have to accept that for yourself. That's them.
I love that. And that it goes so much deeper than I think that, like, we sometimes see, because we do, instead of saying like, oh, I had a bad day, now it's, I attribute this one bad thing to that entirely.
Right.
Did you have a defining moment where, was there someone that affirmed you and that's when you started to change? Or was it like self-affirmations that started to change your thought process about that?
I think it was more self-affirmation in my relationship with God.
Yeah.
Because in college, you would think it's the opposite. But for me, that's when my relationship with God became strengthened.
Yeah.
And I think, the Bible, he is I am who he says I am.
Yeah.
We are above and not beneath. I am, chosen. I am God's child. I am his daughter. We are created in his image. So those things, I began to, like, it really meant something.
Yeah.
And not just growing up in church and hearing these things, but whenever I was by myself and I didn't have my parents, I didn't have my family, I had to lean on something. And so I feel like the relationship with God that I continue to mature, that really led me to the position of being able to say, I have to be okay with who I am. I love myself for who I am and what I look like, regardless of what someone says.
I love that. And it's honestly, like, genuinely one of the reasons why I make so many affirmations, for people, because I went through almost a similar situation. I remember being in middle school. This guy, I had never even given the time of day, right? But somebody else came to me and was like, such and such said they would date you, but you have big eyes. Like, I don't even know him from Adam. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And but from that day forward, when I looked in the mirror, I didn't like what I saw. Like, I didn't like my shape of my eyes. They were huge. I'm like, like, there's something wrong with me, which is wild, because never would have dated him in the first place. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, he wasn't even my type. Wasn't even my type.
Why does it matter?
Right.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until, I want to say, my freshman year, of high school, maybe my junior year, it was one of them too. I was on the homecoming court. I went into Belk, okay, back in the day when you could go in and get your makeup done, okay. And there was a little old Caucasian lady. She's doing my makeup and she says, "Oh my God, you have the most beautiful almond-shaped eyes." And she said it with so much like love and genuineness that it started that healing process for me. So when I would go back in the mirror and I would look at myself, I'm like, dang, I do have almond-shaped eyes. Like, oh, my eyes are beautiful. So now, like, to this day, you can't tell me that my eyes not cute.
What you care what you say.
What you mean?
Right.
Like, I have beautiful eyes, right?
Yes, you do.
Thank you. And you are beautiful, which is crazy because you pulled up and I was like, I just knew you were going to have just your natural state is like, dang, I need some makeup on. But I think it's definitely that inner work that you've done. And I love that you said it was your relationship with God that kind of helped you in that as well. Which I have a question just to kind of go back a little bit because we did talk a little before this. And I found out like you were in church during this time, like where you're being bullied. You were in church and you're actually a PK. And still, like in spite of that, like in spite of being like grounded in church, you still struggled.
Absolutely.
So can you tell us, I guess, just a little of like why you think it still affected you? Where were you at in that place when you were in middle school? Like, although you were in church, why do you think that was still affecting you?
I know that during that time, I did not have a personal relationship with God. It was I went to church. You know, my dad was a preacher. We went to church. We went to every service that there was, Monday night, Wednesday night Bible study, Friday night rehearsal, Saturday, whatever the church had, we were there. But it's different when you have a personal relationship and understand those things for yourself. When we think about songs like, he would, like my mom always sing, he was there all the time, things like that. And songs like Yes, and different things to where they don't mean anything to you at 10 and 12, but they'll mean something when you know God is here. And so regardless of a relationship and where you are, like being in the church, being a PK, you still go through things, the same things that other people go through. And you may not even respond the way that you feel a Christian should respond by saying, oh, you shouldn't let those things hurt you, or, that's people just saying different things about you. You shouldn't let that affect you. You still let that affect you. Those words still hurt. Regardless of where you are and being a part of the church or not being part of the church, it still hurts in that way. And being a sensitive person, it hurts even more because you start to really, like I said, think those things of yourself. And so, just learning that, and even with my daughter, I have a 10-year-old daughter, and I know what things I went through. And so that's why I try to make sure, even though I know she has her own mind, let her see me in my, being able to go through things or being able to handle different situations. How would mommy do it? How do I see mommy handling it? I always tell her, I'm raising a leader. I'm not raising a follower. So you set the example for your friends or whoever you're around. And so in doing that, you have to set an example. Even in being in the church, you set an example. But I really would not. I don't think that me being a PK, that doesn't distinguish you or set.
Yeah.
You're not set aside from being bullied at all. It
Yeah.
still happens.
So even, yes, being a PK, like in that, and you were involved in church, is there anything that you think, like maybe your parents, and I know that they did the best they could, right? But anything that your parents or maybe even other adults around you, do you think that there was anything they could have done that would have helped you, like when you were going through that period?
Well, it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was something that they could have done that they probably knew that they could have done.
Yeah.
A lot of times, the things that I went through or others may go through, you really don't have the dialogue to even bring it up. Like, you
Yeah.
don't have the situation or just the openness to be able to bring it up. But I will say, just having open communication with your children, having more open communication with family, somebody that you can trust, or that you see, even if it's an adult that knows that it's a new child that's starting middle school or starting a higher grade, starting high school, just having those conversations. High school going, is there anything you want to talk about? Even now, that can be something done. So I just would say there wasn't just an open line there to talk about different things. Oh, what are you dealing with? A lot of the feelings, we didn't talk about feelings. We didn't talk about I'm sad or disappointed or somebody hurt my feelings. We didn't talk about that. It was kind of like, how was your day? And move on. So I think just having the open communication with and understanding your child.
Yeah.
Even though they're may be quiet or may not say much, still forcing a communication from them.
Yeah, because like, so thinking back when you were in middle school, right? Because that's every parent's typical. How was your day? Oh, it was fine. What you do today? Oh, nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
So for the parents out there who really are trying to have those open lines of communication, do you think personally you would have actually been honest had your parents asked?
Probably not. I probably would not have said everything.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with this girl at school or this girl making fun of me at school.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been like, she hurt my feelings. I don't know what I should do. Or, I don't think that it would have been a completely open and honest conversation from me, because I didn't want them to feel like they had to worry about me or worry about what's going on with me at school. Like, I can handle it.
So if you didn't want them to worry, is it because you saw them worrying about so many other things?
Correct. And it wasn't like my little situation. My mom, she works 10 hours a day. My dad's trying to run a business. Why they shouldn't be worried about my little bullying that's going on at school.
Which is huge.
Right. But in my mind, I didn't want to bother them with that. And so it just wasn't brought up that way.
So what made you aware of their issues? I guess that would have... Okay, so let me say, you said you didn't want them worrying about your little things because you as a child were aware that they were worrying about all these other things. What made you in your childlike state aware of their problems?
It would just be me knowing that they're having to take care of the house, they're having to take care of bills, they're having to work. And then they have different things going on with their jobs or other people, family. And so as a child, like, mama don't have money for this and that, but she's working, so I'm not gonna bother her with other things that I know are in her head about what she needs to do. And so to me, I just didn't worry about it. That was just a part of me doing my part as a child. Like, I have a younger sister and an older brother. She has to take care of us. I'm not gonna worry them with my problems.
So was it because you were privy to like adult conversation? Did you hear them talking about that kind of stuff?
Not really.
No?
Not really. I didn't. It wasn't, if they did, I didn't really pay much attention to it. Yeah.
Because what I work with teens a lot, right? Mm-hmm. And what I'll typically hear them say is like, oh, my mama be like, girl, like, I ain't worried about you. I got to do such and such, such. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, and it's not like supposed to be in a bad way, but at the same time, they are still making them aware of their adult problems and their kids.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so it does put them in that mind frame, like, well, I don't want to bug her.
Right.
I don't want to bother her. She's already in a bad mood. Or, like they have this going on.
Right.
So it's not necessarily parentification, but something of the sort. So, yes, your parents had like all of those things going on. And obviously other adults do as well. I guess what I typically see, and this is a Aisha problem too, okay? This is what I see in myself is I become so self-absorbed in my own little world, like what I have going on, my problems, and I don't typically do the things that you suggested. Like, oh, I see you started middle school. Like, how's it actually going? You know, and just getting outside of my bubble to get into somebody else's world and figure out what's going on with them. Yeah. So this is just a general conversation. Why do you think we struggle with that so much? Where does that come from?
I think it's a part of that. I think it's our community does not, from the beginning, we were never, it wasn't ingrained to accept each other, to work together, to build each other up. And so back when, 800 years ago, we were pitted against each other. And so that same spirit is in us to do that, to pit against each other, to fight, to, and so it's not a we work together type situation like a lot of, we're trying to, the movements that are now trying to happen because of that. And so I feel like that part kind of it took legs and walked when it came to that.
What are some things that you would say to your middle school self right now? If you could sit down and have a conversation.
I would say, girl, do you know what you go become?
Yeah.
What you are going to eventually be, who you're going to be. Don't allow what people say to dictate your destiny, because that is not your destiny. That is not who you are. Yeah. Don't allow someone else's influence and their insecurities to make you feel a certain way about yourself, because you are not that.
Yeah.
And it would just be a, girl, you better know who you are type of conversation. Because, even looking back now, I'm like, I can't believe I went through, that. And nobody really can tell me nothing now. But, it's just so much that I know that led to who I am and
Yeah.
why I am who I am, and the thoughts. And just even this conversation, not knowing, like, wow, those are some of the things that I really dealt with and really shaped years of me doing and being who I am. So
I agree. Would you tell yourself not to be their friend?
um yeah, probably so. Yeah, I would just don't be around them.
Yeah.
Don't be around them. Because it's not like you're not a punching bag for anyone. And so surround yourself with people who want to be around you or who enjoy you, who build you up.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I love it. So now in life today,
Yes.
are you actively putting those things into practice? Like in your friendships now, like what's typically the type of person that you look for in a friend? Like what kind of boundaries do you have in place?
I think that's why part of me is like in my friendships, I think I'm very, very passionate about being the best friend that I can be. So when it comes to friendships, it's very near and dear to me. I always say it's a difference between a friend and an associate. I don't use the friend term lightly. And so even today, as a grown woman, there are things that I expect in friendships: loyalty. I expect commitment. I expect love. I expect we to build each other up, to understanding, to make sure that both of us, we share the same values when it comes to family, when it comes to things like our relationships with our husbands or whatever, our children. Those things, that's what really matters. And the friends that I have, they know I don't play about them.
Yeah.
And I know they feel the same way about me. But then we can be honest with each other if there's ever situations that we don't disagree. I mean, we don't agree on. We have that open communication, and so I'm very. When it comes to friendships, I know that a lot of the bad friendships that I had is why I know I want to be the friend that I am. And I want to attract those types of friends.
I love that. It's definitely a lot of self-love.
Yes, absolutely.
Self-acceptance, which leads into, I'm sure, your husband, because for you to be able to build all of this, you've got to have a supportive husband in the background.
Girl, yes. So he is, I always tell people, like, he is, you don't see him, but he's there, because if I'm there, he made it happen. He helped me make it happen. Even with the pharmacy, he was there pushing me. He asked me one day not too long ago, do you think you would have opened a pharmacy if I didn't support you? And I said, absolutely not.
Yeah.
He said, really? He said, like, if I wasn't like pushing you to do it, you wouldn't have done it. I said, no. I said, you are the risk taker.
Yeah.
I am not. Like, he has been, had his own business from the time I met him. He's always done that. So he doesn't mind that.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
And so if it wasn't for him pushing me to say, you doing too much, you know what to do, you know how to do it, why aren't you doing it for yourself? Like, his support was everything. And I feel like if you don't have a support system, if you're married and you don't have a supportive spouse, that really can be the detriment of you going after your vision and going after your goals, because You have to have that person that you lay next to. If they're not with you,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter who else is with you. My mom is 100% supporter. My sister and brother, family. But if my husband's not there to support me, it doesn't mean what it means now.
I love it. So, shout out Butler Pharmacy, downtown Gulfport. I love it. And you sell like food, snacks, cakes.
I do bake. I have Racheal Bake, so I'm a baker.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite things to do. So I sell baked goods, and people hound me for them during the week. I'm like, I'm trying to run a business. I might be tired. I don't feel like baking, but they don't care. They want the baked goods.
I love it because you didn't say like, oh, I'm just going to be a pharmacist. Right. You don't constrict yourself to one thing.
Right.
What's your favorite thing about being a pharmacist though?
Oh, Lord. The difference that I can make in someone's life. The difference between them being able to get a medication, the difference between them being able to treat themselves and being able to have what they need to get better.
Yeah.
And to create that better quality of life. Mm-hmm. Like, I have the ability to do that, to create that difference for them. Being able to say, girl, instead of paying $500, do you know I got it down to 70?
That's
you know I got it down to 25? That.
Yeah.
And so that's what I love about. I make my rules. I do what I love to do. It's not always easy and hasn't always been easy. In 2 days, it'll be a year that Butler Pharmacy has been open. Like, I'm like, wow, I can't believe it. But I am thankful for my support system, for being able to step out and say, I can do this on my own. Leaving a job that I loved, but knowing that God had more. Knowing that I can do more, knowing that it's limitless where I am, being a business owner. Like, I don't have to just stop where I am. There's more. I can sell banana pudding. Mm-hmm. I can sell this. I can do this. I can open, it's just a limit. I'm breaking glass ceiling. So I'm thankful for being able to do that.
I love it. So what she's saying is you need to call your prescription in the Butler Pharmacy.
Today.
1924
25th Avenue, Gulfport, Mississippi, 39501. Yes, all day.
We love it.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you. Thank you. And I want to close out. I'm going to pray for you. And then all the people who are potentially just struggling with rejection. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Father, I thank you so much for Dr. Butler here. I thank you, Father, that you are using this story as an inspiration to so many people. I pray that you would continue to pour out boundless favor and success over her. I pray for an influx of customers. I pray, Father, that you would expand her influence and her territory in this season so that she can help more people for your glory. And I thank you, Father, even for the people who watch this who may still be struggling with rejection. I pray that either you would affirm them or you would send people who would help to heal them with your words, with what you say about them. Help them to believe your truth of who they are and what you have called them to be. And I just thank you for it now. And it's in the mighty name of Jesus Christ that we do pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for joining me.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah.